Rivals of Aether 1 was an unassuming game with a fun, novel take on the traditional Smash Bros. Gameplay formula. It went on to get a ton of characters, fun minigame modes, beautiful sprite art, and even crossovers with other indie games. There were even Aether spin-off games in different genres, a short comic series, and you might find it referenced by other indie devs. Rivals 1's full Steam Workshop support for mods means it will have infinite characters and stages for free, making it kind of the Smash Bros. Version of Mugen. True, most of the popular mods are Mario pissing or people's furry OCs, but there's a lot of good stuff too. Rivals 2 was announced a couple years ago and released late 2024 after some delays. How did it live up to the expectations set by Rivals 1? It has a new 3D art style, tons of single-player content, a robust training mode, and... oh, sorry, story mode isn't coming in the first year. Training mode sucks. Keyboard support is worse than Rivals 1. The game flow is much closer to Smash Bros. Than Rivals 1. There are a lot of bugs, and there's no mod support. Yet. So what does Rivals 2 offer? Well, it has a live service microtransaction shop where you can buy skins, and that's about it. You can probably see where this is going. If you're new to the channel, hello, I'm Dragonfly. I'm a legacy Guilty Gear player who got into fighting games in 2017, and I mostly play Xrd and Plus R. These days I play a lot of Street Fighter 6 too. Getting into Rivals 2 and editing this video was a huge undertaking, so please like and subscribe and leave a comment. It helps a lot and lets me know I wasn't doing this for nothing. Anyway, over the years I have played a lot of different fighting games and a lot of really obscure ones. How obscure? I've played in a Death Cargo bracket. What's Death Cargo? It's a game I can't show you and which you can't find footage of anywhere online because it's all been DMCA'd off the internet. It runs in Windows Media Player. So yeah, I've been around the block. Smash Bros. Is actually what got me into competitive gaming in the first place thanks to the Smash Brothers documentary. I played Melee for a couple years, Sheik and Samus, but I found the execution grind unfulfilling and that's how I moved to Guilty Gear. In a way, I'm returning to my origins, given that Rivals of Aether 2 obviously takes a lot of inspiration from Melee. This is both a good thing and a bad thing. I first saw Rivals of Aether 1 in early development with only 2.5 characters and maybe 1 or 2 stages. It wasn't just half-baked, it was an embryo inside of an egg. I did buy it to support the effort, but it didn't click for me. When Rivals 2 was announced, I was cautiously interested because I thought it would be a chance for the game to start fresh and make some bold new changes. It seemed to be doing well, raising over $2 million in investor funding, followed by another $1 million in Kickstarter funding. I want to go in as blind as possible for Rivals 2 to see what the devs have done with all their money and the benefit of hindsight. The game will obviously change a lot over time, so while I don't care about balance, I expect there to be a strong foundation to build on. Also, just for perspective, I started writing this script and playing Rivals 2 in February of 2025. Then I took a break for a bit, coming back a couple weeks after Olympia had been added, sometime in May. There will be inconsistencies in menus and other things in this video, but most of the footage I'll be using is from newer builds. I won't edit any footage to be deceptive. Before anything else, I'll just say that I really like animal and anthro characters. It's surprising how little this stuff gets explored in fighting games aside from the obligatory cat girls. Bloody Roar? Dead. Them's Fightin' Herds? Mismanaged and dead. Beast's Fury? Scam. And the rest seem to be gay fetish material. Judging from this Aether Studios artist, maybe there's some overlap. I wasn't planning on mentioning this guy, but while I was researching the Rivals 2 devs, I tried to look at his Blue Sky profile. Tried. Typical Blue Sky, I guess. Regardless, credit where it's due. The Rivals cast are really well designed and they combine animal motifs with cool variations on standard elemental powers. They could have turned out so much worse, and I appreciate the quality of the work. Personally, I'd like the women to look a little more feminine, but I imagine there's a strict no-sex mandate from management. Anyway, I was always critical of the tiny, low-resolution sprites of Rivals 1, even if they did improve over time, or perhaps because they improved. Newer characters and stages got better and better animations, but old characters stagnated. Eliana has lavish sprites and smoke effects, whereas Krag's forward air never got shading applied to its smear frames. Zetterburn and Sylvanos look like they're from completely different games. Rivals 2 has a much more consistent art style and level of quality, which is great. The 3D models also allow for a lot of fun contortion effects like Krag compacting his opponents into cubes or Elephant DDD getting covered in magma. I have minor gripes about certain animations or some characters' proportions, like how Elephant DDD has incredibly stubby limbs so his run animation looks dumb. But in contrast, basically everything about Fleet looks great. Most characters are more like Fleet. As for characters, let me walk you through how I decided on mine.
I don't want to play as the boy because I'm not gay.
Yo, dude, that's what I said, man.
Fleet is cute and cool, but she's kind of complicated and seems to be more of a space control zoner than your average character. It's hard to play zoners in games like these because they change strategy a lot depending on the exact situation. A second point is that, generally, all Smash players absolutely despise any form of zoning, so zoners are either low tier or not allowed at all. She's also kind of slow to move around, which I find awkward. Maple is one of my favorite characters aesthetically, and I like her gameplay style. I often enjoy medium weird characters who have good fundamentals and some strong gimmick, and Maple's seed and plant summons tick that box. Plus, her whips are the most satisfying moves in the game. When I first tried controlling her, she just felt too strange. There was no middle ground between her fast attacks and her enormous kill moves. Italis is ugly. He looks like a mobile game character. I have hated him since I saw him in Rivals 1. I hate him in this game, and I hope he remains a low tier for its entire lifespan. I hate his generic gruff fat guy voice direction, and I hate him living to 200% on every stock because that forces me to see him on the screen for longer. Complete waste of resources, roster space, and development time. This character ought to have been buried face down in a ditch. 0 out of 10 would not main. Anyway, I started with Clarin. I like characters who have long range without being full zoners, and her design and backstory are cool. She's also very simple. I'm pretty good at this game. Which is good because I play Raven and God knows my brain is the size of a grape. Use sword on man. Use up tilt on jump man. Use grab on shield man.
Oh, that was cool.
Although I did end up going back to Maple after I got to grips with the game. It turns out her flowchart is a lot simpler than Clarin's, which means I can succeed with fewer moves, mostly dash attack. And even when I fumble my follow-up, it doesn't matter because all of her attacks combo into each other. Characters are one thing, but stages are another. A lot of fighting game players don't care too much about stages because they're all rectangles, but frankly, I'm an elitist about fighting game stages because I've played a lot of Smash, and the gameplay differences of each stage give them a lot of personality. I have very high standards for stage visuals in fighting games, even though they're usually cosmetic. My favorite stages in Smash are the ones that manage to blend a 3D location with practical 2D gameplay. There's a real art to this, and Rivals 1 had a lot of stages that did it well despite graphical limitations. Look at Rivals 1 Treetops. The mismatched platforms and deadly plants make it feel organic. The stage isn't there for you to play a 1st to 3 set in a tournament, it's there because somebody built a house out of that tree. The same cannot be said of the Etherean Forest stages in Rivals 2. On the whole, Rivals 2's stages look fine. The 3D style gives a lot more detail to things in the foreground, but also shows just how empty the backgrounds are. Rivals 1 didn't have this problem because the 2D art style let it cheat on perspective. You can't see behind anything. Merchant Port looks crowded in Rivals 1 because the platforms and background clutter draw your attention to the port itself. The Rivals 2 version, despite having a developed shoreline in the background, feels very empty because it also has about 50 square miles of open ocean. And, crates, I guess. Let's give it up for crates. Everything in Rivals 2 has this clean, consistent style, which I like, but the stages often cross the line from clean to sterile. Rivals 1 Jules Vale takes place in a bustling city. It makes sense that the background is so lively, and that the elevated platform is carrying parcels from one window to another. In Rivals 2, Jules Vale has a nice molten metal color palette and some cogs on the platforms, but it's lost all that energy and life. Where are the people in this bustling industrial city? And don't get me started on how the Badger Tower uses a stock font, or how the 2 clock faces and crane in the background aren't moving. Rivals 1 Rockwall is a remote, desolate stage because that's what it is, an uncompromising wall of stone made to contain the rampant forest growth. Crag's arcade mode shows that he spends his entire life traveling the wall to maintain it. It's huge. Rivals 2 Rockwall is also desolate and sterile, but somehow it lacks that sense of scale. It has the inverse problem of Merchant Port, where the foreground stuff prevents me from seeing the scale of the wall in the background. All the scenery is here, I just can't see it. Also, sorry, but is this Brazil? Is Orcane Brazilian? Is Orcane Jesus? Is Italis' stage being called a harbor even though it clearly isn't a harbor some kind of clue? Is the Rivals 2 world canonically flat and that's the ice wall? What's the cosmology of this place? Dan, I expect these answers in the story mode. Rivals 1 had great music. I genuinely don't think the game would have been nearly as popular if it weren't for the bitchin' soundtrack. It all sounds great and every track matches its stage perfectly. Rivals 2 has good music too, but while the orchestrated music is different from Rivals 1, there's something about having a larger dynamic range for the instruments that makes some tracks feel kind of empty. The sound mixing in Rivals 1 wasn't too clean from what I remember, so you might not be aware of how complex and nuanced the music was. Seriously, listen to the Air Armada stage theme from Rivals 1 compared to Rivals 2. There's something about the crunchy, raspy guitar that just punches harder. Both versions are very good pieces of music, but the new music succeeds when it doesn't directly invite comparisons like this. One success of Rivals 2's music is during final stock situations when a tense version of the stage theme replaces the normal one. I'm not usually a fan of dynamic music systems like this, since I just prefer to have the music not get in the way, but it contributes to the mood here. Because last stock is always a tense situation, the game is simply reacting to what I feel rather than trying to make me feel something. Rivals 2 uses a netcode solution from SnapNet, developed by High Horse Entertainment, whom I had never heard of. Apparently it's a two-man team of ex-Call of Duty devs. On their website, you'll find them bragging about SnapNet not requiring strict determinism like traditional fighting games. Strict determinism can be very hard, so I'm sure that although Rivals 2 has deterministic math for combat, lockstep progression for up to 4 players would be exponentially harder to account for. But, come on, this isn't a 4-player game. You aren't fooling anybody. Furthermore, the needs of an 8-man lobby for a standard AAA multiplayer product where you can die in a handful of frames are not the same as a primarily 1v1 game where you have much more time to live. Having an authoritative server to smooth out discrepancies is a lot less important if there are only 2 people playing, which is how many there will be. As for the netplay experience itself, when I first played Rivals 2 in February, I didn't notice any major problems with most of my connections. When the delay and rollback frames totaled less than 3, it felt smooth. However, dips in connection quality meant fluctuating rollback and fluctuating delay, which is even worse than it sounds, and which entirely misses the point of rollback netcode. You can feel the crunchiness when things go wrong, and there's no way to abandon the match due to a bad connection. 6 rollback frames. That's a shame. I might have declined this connection if I'd been allowed to decline it. Strange decision for a game about try-hard 1v1 ranked matches. The best rollback solutions, like Guilty Gear Plus R, let you set a static delay and make up for discrepancies with fluctuating rollback. Rivals 2 doesn't give you any control, which avoids a big benefit of rollback netcode and introduces a lot of the problems that old delay-based netcode had. The game also has serious CPU optimization problems that affect the netcode, which I know because some schizo dumbass wrote about it on Reddit, and I was going to make a joke here, but he's actually not totally wrong? Oh dear. Okay, so it's not good, but when it works, it's functional. Normally, I wouldn't praise a game for being functional under ideal conditions, but given everything that happens outside the match... Okay, so I didn't want to do any voiceover for this recording session. I just wanted to see what the game had become after it had gotten all these updates and all these characters and other things were added to it. So I decided the simplest way to do that would be to hop into Ranked and just let the game place me where it was going to. Small problem. When I first played this game, it required, I think, 5 placement matches, and now it requires 4 placement wins. And if you're paying close attention, you might notice that winning is one kind of outcome and losing is another. And the point of a placement match is to determine whether or not you deserve to be with the people who win a lot or the people who lose a lot. In my first couple of games I lost because I'm terrible at this game, right? And it kept downgrading the quality of my opponent. And then I won one against some guy who was playing Rat Makoto and just flailing around doing nothing. And then the next guy I fight is in, I think, silver. And I'm not that good, okay? I have a job. I'm not going to be above bronze in this game. And I'm forced to just lose against this guy whom I have no chance of beating. Because the people who implement this play 20 games a day, and they just don't see a problem with it. So I'm still getting these ranked season mint medals. I'm still getting progression towards all the things in the shop, like the event and experience for my character and other stuff. There's no difference in terms of the money or the numbers or anything I'm getting. Dude, I'm bad at this game. Do you really expect me to win 4? Why can't anything in this game just work? Just let me play, please. To put it simply, Rivals 2's net play experience seems to be doing too much and accomplishing too little. I can't decline ranked matches before they begin, which means I can't decline bad connections. Super Street Fighter 4 let you do both of these in 2010. I could narrow down my data centers to ones within a reasonable distance, which I did. I still got bad connections. Obviously. More to the point, I'm on the east coast of North America. Good peer-to-peer rollback should be able to handle connections down to South America or Europe without problems. I know this because I've played them. Server-based netcode strangles my range of playable connections down to a tiny fraction of what they are. When I started playing Plus R back in 2020, you know who my #1 sparring partner was? A Brazilian on Wi-Fi who played with a broken knockoff PS3 gamepad. I couldn't even begin to play somebody like that in Rivals 2. If Guilty Gear Plus R can do everything you're trying to do and do it better, with RNG mechanics and over a decade's worth of Arc System Works spaghetti code under the hood, what excuse do you have? Fix your game, Dan. Update from editor Dragonfly here, Dan has not fixed his game. I'm writing this update in June. Sometime during the spring, Rivals 2's servers started having serious stability problems for basically everyone. Huge, unpredictable lag spikes have been commonplace for months when playing any mode in any region. Apparently some servers are worse than others, like US Chicago, but the devs have only acknowledged the problem offhand. Look, may I be brutally honest? Your hyper-competitive indie game focused on 1v1 ranked matches cannot live if people cannot play it. Any fun I might have had from trying out new characters or playing a close game is tarnished when Rivals 2 ignores my inputs for a full second and teleports me into the blast zone. I play on a wired connection, and I'm sure many of my opponents do too. This is the true test of netcode. When things go wrong, what happens? almost feel like I don't need to explain the mechanics, because if you've ever played a Smash Bros. Game before, which you have, then you know how Rivals 2 works. You have 2 attack buttons that can be combined with direction inputs, precise air and ground movement, the usual stuff. Sadly, this means that all the aggravating input inconsistencies that have permeated Smash games forever are also present in Rivals 2. I played on a standard DualShock 4 that I've used for over 10 years, and I still got accidental turnarounds, did my neutral, down, and up specials the wrong way, frequently got the wrong tilt and air attacks, and ran off the stage a ton. Maybe that one's on me. Oh my good lord, I'd stop fucking running off the fucking stage! Oh my god! I tap it to the fucking... Jesus Christ! The buffer system is also lenient to the point of being obnoxious. Frequently, when I got hit off stage near a platform, I would attempt to tech roll onto the platform, miss the platform, and then air dodge what felt like 20 frames later. On several occasions, this led to my recovery being screwed up. Before you leave a comment, yes, I adjusted the stick dead zones and sensitivity. What the fuck? I have no idea what that 2/1 adjust means. Although without any visual reference, this meant I had to manually parse out what the numbers did, what the default value meant, and what my changes were. This was tedious and unclear, and I'm still not sure exactly what the end result was. Just to show off what's happening in that Zetterburn clip, I recreated it in training mode. The issue is that I'm holding full right, and you can see that in the number at the bottom joystick. The first number is the horizontal position, and the second number is the vertical. And then once I grab it, I let go of the stick and drift back to neutral. In doing so, apparently, I go down to -0.15, and then on the next frame I go down to -0.35. So let's see what happens if in training mode I go down to -0.15, and I try to advance several frames. As you can see, I can go through many frames, and that is not enough downward input on the stick in order to mess it up. So what happens if I go down to -0.35? That's enough to make me disconnect from the ledge, but that's not what made me disconnect from the ledge, because I didn't input that until I was already falling. I don't know what the subframe logic is in this game, but it's not something that I am not capable of controlling. When I have the stick in full right and I want to go back to neutral, I don't slip to full down and then go back up to neutral. I know how to control my character. Having to do this made me appreciate Rivals 1's lack of analog movement, because that game worked much better on more input devices like arcade sticks, keyboards, and D-pads. And it didn't sacrifice speed or precision to do that. And for comparison, precise spacing was a lot more important in Rivals 1. Rivals 1 was a game that didn't have shields, grabs, or ledges, which made it a much more aggressive and movement-oriented game. You either dodged an attack manually, or parried it if you had a read on the timing. When you got hit, things got very bad very fast. Recovering was also very different. While some characters could fly or teleport to the stage, most had to rely on using up specials and wall jumping out of freefall. It made things a lot more active and generally encouraged both players to spend time off stage. Rivals 1 also let the attacker do fast falls freely in combos by inputting down when air attacks made contact. Hit falling, as it was called, made the game much more combo-friendly than most Smash games. In a Smash game, using a fast fall in a combo would require you to do everything manually, reach the apex of your jump arc, then input the fast fall independently of whatever attack you wanted. Rivals 2 still has hit falling, and combos are strong, but edge guarding seems to be significantly weaker. It also introduced shields, grabs, and ledges, making things generally feel more like Smash Bros. And making stationary defense a viable option. It seems like the devs wanted to make defense a lot easier than in Rivals 1 by having very explicit mechanics for it. I don't have a problem with this in principle, but shielding isn't really the big offender, as you'll see later. Grabs, the biggest answer to stationary defense, give you the option to pummel or input a directional throw like Smash Bros. The attacker can do either a normal pummel or special pummel, and the victim has a chance to break out by matching the pummel. It's a pretty real mix-up that doesn't depend on percentage or stage position, and can lead to kills or give character-specific buffs, which is nice. Rivals 2 also lets you do specials on Wake Up and from ledge. From what I saw, they are usually slower than normal attacks, but more rewarding in some other way. Nice to have the variety, I guess? Rivals 2 obviously prides itself on taking extremely direct inspiration from Melee and Project M, down to very specific nuances of how characters control, how hit stun works, and how even hit stop works. It is for this reason, and the clunky, aggravating controls, that I consider it to be a Smash clone, whereas Rivals 1 is what I'd call a platform fighter. I've heard people call Rivals 2 Project M Legally Distinct Edition, and I have to agree it feels that way. Personally, I'd have liked for the game to try setting itself apart from Smash Bros. In general and Melee in particular. Different control scheme, different core system mechanics, different style of recovery, something. Both Melee and Project M already have established audiences and free netplay clients with rollback, so Rivals 2 doesn't do itself any favors by inviting comparisons. Interruption from editor Dragonfly. This section was going to talk about floor hugging, a degenerate and unfun mechanic. When I wrote this section in February, there had been more than one statement from the devs that they knew how powerful the floor hugging mechanic was and they had no intention of patching it out, since that would require them to reevaluate every attack in the game. People had simply gotten used to it. When Olympia was added to the game in May, the devs addressed floor hugging in a pretty big way, so this section will inherently be outdated. Consider it a snapshot of the game's first major patch, addressing a mechanic that pretty much everybody absolutely fucking despises. These are decisions from the people who will lead you forward for a decade of live service balance patches. Now, what is floor hugging? Well, I made this whole explanation, but watch this video if you're curious. In short, the way it originally worked was a result of two parts of the engine and combat design. All hit stun in Rivals 2 puts you airborne. While airborne or becoming airborne, you can tap the control stick to shift your character during hit stop of the attack hitting you. Thus, you could tap down the moment you got hit, shift your character into the ground, and negate your hit stun to punish or escape anything. Thus, basically nothing except grabs and spikes were safe on hit. Again, seriously, watch that BioBurb video if you want to see how aggravating it is to try defending when all of your punishes simply don't work on the attacker. With the Olympia patch, the major change was you can't floor hug while you're in a particular type of hit stun or after your attack gets parried. I think? I read you can no longer floor hug non-tumble attacks while in parry stun, and you can no longer floor hug non-tumble attacks while in flinch states, and had a minor seizure. One thing I did notice about the patch was the lack of any kind of cooldown or lockout period on floor hugging, so while it won't work in as many situations, there is no mechanical drawback if you try to input a floor hug every time you might do something unsafe. The option select is free in fighting game terms. If all this sounds incredibly unintuitive, convoluted, and aggravating to deal with on almost every hit, it is. It's especially strange for a game that prided itself on being accessible to create a mechanic that requires you to down tap after everything you do because it's optimal.
There is no mashing in this game. Rivals is designed to not be intensive on your hands. SDI is an automatic input instead of one where you have to tap. Tapping won't do anything, again, just hold in that direction.
And then they patched it again, and then again in June. Orkane, I'm begging you, please save me from this hell. Orkane, please! Pardon me. Frankly, this lack of basic common sense extends to other things in the game's core mechanics. The live servicification of balance adjustments is already insufferable, but this mechanic was around for like a year before Rivals 2 even released. The situation does not fill me with confidence when I consider the future. For example, Fleet has an ammunition mechanic where she can empower certain arrow attacks. This ammunition, which she can only refill one arrow at a time, is represented by arrows above her portrait. Clear enough, right? Well, it didn't originally look like this. Fleet is from Dungeons of Aether, and because this arrow mechanic is a reference to the stamina mechanic from that game, the devs wanted to use the same visual indicator, dice. Because in Dungeons of Aether, you constantly roll dice to generate random numbers for combat, and in Rivals 2, you use a single die to track a non-random number that goes up or down by one at a time. Do you see the problem? Well, after months of players being confused about Fleet's random dice mechanic, the visual was changed into a standard ammo counter. Look, sometimes designing HUD elements for things is hard. This is not hard. This is something that fighting games, hell, video games have been doing since the fucking 90s. How do you screw it up? How do you not understand that people will see a rolling die and think of random numbers? That's what dice do. If core fundamental things like this are fumbled so easily, do you think the complicated stuff will be done right? Do you want to play a game where some new bullshit gets added and it takes the devs over a year to so much as acknowledge the problem? This transition doesn't work now that I had to rewrite the Floorhugging section, but speaking of cosmetics, let's talk about the store. I'm just going to say it here. Do not spend money on Rivals 2, do not buy skins for Rivals 2, do not reply to Rivals 2 shills, hide Rivals 2 threads. Normally I'd save this for the conclusion, but we're going to be talking about money here, so you should know where it's going. That being Off-Brand Games, a publishing company run by Ludwig Ogren and Jason Hall. Okay, Editor Dragonfly here. This is a little unscripted. When I first wrote this in February, nobody had any idea who Pirate Software was, so I went into all this detail and I came up with this timeline of events that showed who he was and where he came from and what he did in Second Life, and I'm sorry for reminding you that Second Life ever existed. It's not like he made and sold 3D sex models of ferret people in Second Life, had the ferret character in Rivals 2 get a special costume with his own brand on it, and arranged for a cut of money from that costume and other items to go to a charity he operates to help ferrets. That's obviously a schizo conspiracy theory. That's obvious. Oh, for fuck's sake. But now everybody knows who Pirate Software is, everybody knows that he hates you and that he wants you to own nothing and be happy, and he wants you to give him infinite money via microtransactions. So rather than focus on what everybody already knows, I'm going to focus in on a new piece of information that has come to the forefront of the conversation, which is a lie. And that lie is the notion that Rivals of Aether 2 has an end-of-life plan. Really, an end-of-life plan during this consumer movement, at this flashpoint in the industry, localized entirely on your Kanban board? Yes. May I see it? No. If you believe that Rivals of Aether 2 has an end-of-life plan, I have a steamed hamburger to sell you. There is a statement from Dan Fornace far before this firestorm began, which indicates there was some end-of-life plan, peer-to-peer networking, something like that. As you'll see later in the video, Rivals of Aether 2 has had a rough production cycle, and the company almost did not survive. So the notion that they have a luxurious plan for end-of-life support, that they have nothing but respect for customers, that they're going to leave the game in this beautiful offline state where you can play it however you want, the notion that they're going to implement their own network solution for peer-to-peer multiplayer on a game where they've outsourced the netcode to server-based netcode infrastructure is complete nonsense. And if you fall for it, you're stupid. Can we please just stop defending these obvious lies? There is no plan. They have another 1,000 Maple skins to make. They have another 1,000 Fox Girl skins to make. They're not going to care about end of life. They are making hay while the sun is shining, and you are dumb enough to pay for it. Please stop defending this. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the Rivals 2 store. Before I spend the next however long bitching about the store, I just wanted to say that it baffles me how accepting the average gamer is of microtransaction live service bullshit. There is an optimistic narrative going around which suggests that because all these new live service games are flopping, people are getting tired of the delivery model. This is untrue. That's because when a new live service game comes along, it's competing with other live service games and their entrenched players who clearly accept live services. If the game can't crack open a market, it dies. See Concord, XDefiant, Redfall, the new Marathon, etc.
Fuck the Lawbreak, this game is dead.
Some games are lucky enough to have a dedicated audience, like Overwatch and Counter-Strike and Destiny, but that doesn't stop devs from making sequels. Sometimes there is at least the appearance of a legitimate reason for making a sequel, like Counter-Strike being limited by the Source 1 engine or Destiny 2 no longer supporting the PlayStation 3. Most of the time, it's a situation like Overwatch 2 where they simply want your money. Again. CS and Overwatch, rather than compete with their past selves, nuked the old version out of existence and forced their abused players to make it do with an inferior product. Destiny 2 regularly takes existing missions and modes and shoves them in the vault, where they languish until the game moves so far ahead that the new codebase is incompatible with the old stuff. There is one constant: no refunds. Please keep all of that in mind as we discuss the Rivals 2 store. The base price of Rivals 2 is
$29.99 USD.
$29.99? None of that $60 multiplayer only bullshit.
which the devs claim will give you access to every character and stage. Currently, there aren't any additional game modes, so we'll see if any of them get paywalled. Additionally, Rivals 2 has a cosmetic microtransaction store with 2 different types of currencies, a cosmetic battle pass that refreshes every month, and a special section at the front. This section showcases discounted filler items to give the impression that your filthy poor person money is actually worth something. And if you buy an item from that section, then it'll get replaced with a random item from the same category. So if you see an item you don't want from a category you do, then you can gamble. Yes, the odds will only ever get worse as more stuff is added, don't think about it. Does this sound dishonest? It is. If the store showed you what you wanted and what it actually cost, you'd never buy anything. Hey, Dan, from the bottom of my heart, go fuck yourself.
100 Ether bucks are worth $1, and 1 Ether buck can get you 100 Ether coins. We aren't trying to hide anything, but you'll have to do just a little bit of math.
You're selling this game to teenagers, to children. Would you be okay with your own kids playing a game like this? Normalizing this kind of gambling, having their brains affected by casino psychology and dark patterns? Do you want your children to grow up to be furry VTubers spending $6 grand on a Foxgirl skin? Well, I suppose your company got that money, so maybe you do. But you cannot call yourself a plucky indie game developer making something defiant. Your publisher is run by an ex-Blizzard forum Janny. As far as I'm concerned, you are part of the problem. Out of curiosity, I did do a bit of math to figure out how much of my time it takes to get something from the store just using the poor person coins. From the ranked games I played, I got around 50 to 120 coins per game. You seem to get more coins when you play well, so if you weren't already stressed about your performance, you will be.
Oh.
Let's say I get good and have fairly even games that give me about 100 coins. 100 coins is $1, so let's say one game equals $1. Let's also say that I'm good and each game takes 3 minutes, although the timer is 8 minutes, because that's how Melee does it. We love Melee, nothing about Melee should ever be questioned. Mango Nation, Fox McCloud, Mango Nation, Fox McCloud. A cheap palette is $160, an expensive palette is $320, a full skin is $500. That's 8 or 16 hours for one palette for one character. That's 25 fucking hours for a skin. And don't tell me about the free currency you get from grinding out battle passes. The crack dealer down the street will give me my first hit for free. Polygons and texture files aren't scarce resources. Bottom line, your time is valuable. Never let anyone tell you otherwise, and never listen to people who tell you this stuff is okay.
Dispersado says, I played more WoW than you played SC, so let that sink in. Okay, careful. I put the low end for me of StarCraft is about 30,000. So StarCraft 2 was 2010, StarCraft 1 was 1998, and that's the only thing I did for that 15-year period. I do 20 hours a week of playing that game, 50 weeks a year, so that's 1,000 hours a year, so that's like 15,000 hours, like right there. And I'm like absolutely certain I did more than 20 hours a week. So like very quickly we get to 15,000 hours, like trivially.
Obviously, they don't want me to know what progress I'm making, so that I simply turn my brain off and get excited to consume product. On one particular occasion, I decided to grind for a little more money to get a color for Clarin that I liked. Because of the inconsistent matchmaking and game times, what should have taken 45 minutes of gameplay was stretched out to 2 hours. Once I did get the costume, my euphoria wore off pretty quick, believe it or not.
Yep.
Maybe if I'd done a little bit of math, I would have stopped playing sooner and switched to Maple. She had a skin I kind of liked in one of the battle passes, so I was at least able to unlock that at my own pace. Are we really at this point now? When I was a kid playing Melee, which is the game Rivals 2 is trying to emulate down to subframe logic by the way, I'd unlock entire new characters and stages out of the blue in half that time. People used Flash to make a Smash game that had Goku and Crystal, and it was free. It still is. Now I get to pay to enter a furry Smash Bros. Casino, have my time wasted, and then spend my funny money on things I don't want. I pity all the Zoomers who didn't grow up with infinite, high-quality Flash games and who think all this shit is normal. The community in fighting game community has always felt different for me compared to most people. I didn't start playing fighting games with a big series like Mortal Kombat, Tekken, or Street Fighter. I started with Guilty Gear Xrd in a scene where most people hated Guilty Gear Xrd. Despite their shit taste, this seems to have been a blessing in disguise. I literally had to become trilingual and learn Guilty Gear, Under Night, and assorted air dashers in order to have anyone at all to play at my locals. Consequently, my most played matchups are Milia, Dizzy, and Eno. Somehow, I've never stabbed anybody. Please clap. Not only did learning these matchups broaden my horizons, it meant that being a salty bitch and rage quitting simply wasn't an option. I never had more than a handful of people to play with, so I had to be happy playing long sets, learning matchups in depth, and forming connections that way. It seems this approach to, taking agency over your own time and fun makes me an outlier in the Rivals 2 community, especially about learning matchups. Talking shit about Redditors is low-hanging fruit, but you can go onto the Rivals of Aether subreddit and consistently find people bitching and whining about the simplest things. I imagine the Discords are even worse. Here, an Arcane player wonders why a character with a range advantage and a life lead would not approach, so he uploads it to Reddit seeking emotional support.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is a cheap move!
Yeah, pal, that's what happens when you do nothing for 8 straight minutes instead of setting a puddle trap and stopping it. Not everyone is like this, and there are people having fun and making memes, but they are definitely the minority. I'll just say that the Rivals community is the product of the Smash community multiplied by the pressure of a try-hard competitive game seasoned thoroughly with esports clout chasing. Industrial gambling psychology has also been laced in for flavor. The result? The scrub mindset is off the fucking charts, and the faceless ranked grind makes it even worse. This is one part of the game that will absolutely never improve no matter how many patches it gets. You know the number one thing that makes people salty? Not having control and not being able to communicate. The dudes calling you slurs over Counter-Strike voice chat, building sentry guns under the floor, and spraying meatspin.gif in your spawn room were more easygoing than anyone born in the last 15 years. You breathe in, you breathe out, and you move on with your life. It's a game, and we play games to have fun. You know the best thing about fighting games? Talking to the other guy and coming to a greater understanding of the game and yourself. Is the matchup bad, or do I just jump too much? Is the mix-up lethal, or is there some way I can downgrade it? Was my opponent reading me, or just using an option select? You'll never know because in Rivals 2, you don't get to bring friends. I wish I could talk to this guy and tell him how to recover as FRAG. Because he's obviously new. I just wish I could talk to him and tell him to recover. Oh, that. Okay, sure. That works too. This is what ranked does to people. The dude has one bad experience and he just decides to dip out. That's a shame. Rivals 1 got patched a lot. Seriously, that game got patched a shit ton. Rivals 2 has also been patched quite a lot since I started playing it in February of this year. Some of these are pleasant surprises that addressed my would-be complaints, like having Break the Targets now be in its own menu instead of buried in arcade mode. I should also mention that Natalis got fur tufts added and some skins were modified to accommodate them. That's good, I guess? He still looks like a mobile game character. More to the point, while I am happy the game gets frequent updates, I know what that does to a community. It makes deep, good faith conversation impossible because maybe the patch will fix things. Long-running games like League of Legends and Dota 2 already show what happens when this problem metastasizes. Whatever issues each version has can't really be identified or even covered in any detail before the next version comes out. Hell, that's happened to me like half a dozen times in the making of this very video. Playing a single game with each Dota 2 character would require hundreds of hours, and obviously you aren't a pro player with a full-time salary to do that, so obviously you aren't going to, so obviously your opinion is trash. Frankly, this pace of updates is intentional.
For a live service, more than anything, more important even than quality, a live service is about being fast. Back in 2010, you could have a long-lasting, high-retention game just by releasing something that was super high quality, really well balanced, and unchanged that players kept coming back to for years. But to stay afloat as a service today, you need to be constantly feeding your players. You need to be responding to their concerns. And so if box products are in the business of over-delivery, live service is the business of constant delivery. Velocity is more important than position. Like, your position is your game's quality right now. How good is it? But so much more important for us now is how fast can you change that position? I'd rather have fast than perfect. Being perfect, even just being great, is your current position. And a fast game will become great. But a great, slow game will very quickly fall behind.
The more stuff that happens, the less possible it is for any individual thing to be criticized. Most people are just that shallow and that dumb, and if you jangle enough keychains in front of them, they will forget what happened last week. It's also a defense against criticism because anything I say today could be invalidated tomorrow. Hey, I'm happy to be wrong if the game does improve, but you're delusional if you think the game will only improve. And what then? Are people allowed to criticize it? Will everyone just shrug and expect the devs to fix it in the next patch? And what if they don't? So, whatever happens to Rivals 2, this video is what it is. I made every good faith effort to interact with the game, I paid my money, and played the way I wanted to. This was the experience I had. Aether Studios is willing to take an infinite amount of my money and waste hours of my life. The product was final, I judged it. Everything about the game's identity is two-headed and pulling it in different directions, and the ranked grind really embodies this. Is the game supposed to be good for casuals who will each buy a few skins? The roster is small, there's no story mode, no minigames, no tutorial, no fun novelty game modes, no trophies, no items, no modifiers, nothing. You don't even get the little story vignettes that Rivals 1 had in its arcade mode. Apparently the matchmaking for the alleged 4-player mode didn't work for 3 or 4 months after launch. Why? Because the game would grind the lobby to a halt if any player left. Because you can't just have 3 people play in the 4-player mode. What are you, crazy? We wouldn't want to be uncompetitive. Is the game supposed to be good for tryhards who will each spend $1,000 on skins? The roster is small, training mode sucks, the netcode is inconsistent, the matchmaking doesn't let you talk to people or play long sets, the ranked grind is bland, and lobbies are broken. Or at least I think they are. When I tried browsing for lobbies the first time, the game got stuck in an infinite loading loop and soft-locked on me. Given the rest of the bugs I found, I assume the lobbies are unreliable. But you know the real reason I can tell Rivals 2 wasn't designed with player fun in mind? The waiting. The endless waiting. Oh my god, the fucking waiting. Wait while the game loads the main menu. Wait while the game loads each tab of the store. Wait while the game spins up a server to babysit you. Wait while the game loads the stage. Wait while the victory animations play and your dopamine numbers tick up. Wait while you and your opponent ban stages for a meaningless ranked match. Hey, what if I just want to practice a matchup on a particular stage? What if I want to get used to converting hits on a weird layout? What if I paid for a stage skin and somebody bans it? What if I like the stage? Why can't I just play the game the way I want to? Only Smash players would build systems like this because only Smash players think you'd simply never play on a stage that doesn't favor your character. You know, as much as Street Fighter 6 has problems with its core gameplay and monetization, the game doesn't interfere with me when I want to play it. I can queue up in ranked, or casual, or both. I can search for and make lobbies with labels showing different skill levels. I can find people in the Battle Hub and appreciate their avatar shitposts. Each of these caters to a different need, and it's nice having all of them even if I only use 1 or 2. There's more than one type of person playing your game. And when I'm finished with one set, I can start the next one in like 2 seconds. I was literally playing the game last night, said 1 more set to myself, and then I played 3 more before I knew it. The game's like candy. In Rivals 2, half the time I spend quote-unquote playing ranked is finding an opponent and waiting for menus to scroll by, in the only game mode it fucking has. And you know what you'll find when you try to engage with ranked or any other alleged game mode? Bugs. Some of them are pretty harmless, like duplicate character models on a windscreen. Some of them will make the game unplayable. Holy fucking shit, I've never seen a fucking windscreen rollback before. Oh my good lord, that was terrifying. It's really easy to be unsafe on. Oh my god, it rolled back again! Not another horrible 4-armed frog monster. I keep getting double-teamed by this fucking frog, dude. Oh no!
Won't get in my way.
2 Clarence? And 2 Clarence and a rage quit. I could not ask for a nicer Saturday night. Minor bugs. Your mouse moves to the top left of a new window every time the game changes scope. This is very annoying. There's an audio bug in training mode that results in overlapping music tracks, making it unplayable. I've gotten it to work consistently with Rockwall, so let's go to Rockwall. And you can hear the music playing, right? That's working normally. And now I can hear the stage music playing on character select. And if I go to, like, Air Armada, what happens? And now I can hear the character select music in the stage. And the stage music. And now I'm hearing only the stage music on character select. Load times are longer than they should be, even on an M.2 SSD in my high-end gaming rig. Alright, so that's a second of lag that doesn't need to be there. Let's say I want to go back out, right? Look at this bar at the top left. Okay, now we're back to the main menu. The game will show your most recently used character, costume, and platform on the main menu, but this only applies to ranked. If you want to lab or play local versus with that costume, then you need to manually scroll through your costumes, platforms, and death effects every time you select your character. Major bugs. Whatever the fuck this is, which crashed the game. There is also an issue with the save states overwriting training menu settings and causing the menus to become desynced. As mentioned earlier, I tried to view player lobbies on the first day and got hard locked. 1, I can't back out of this menu. 2, the spinning loading graphic was off-center. Unforgivable. When you enter the character select screen, the game forgets what input device you are using. Then the first input device that inputs anything will be locked into player 1. This wouldn't be such a problem for somebody who is just playing ranked in his boxer shorts, but if you're managing recordings or stream stuff with keyboard hotkeys, then you can lock yourself into using your keyboard. Here's my live reaction. Several times. I don't remember. That's cute. I moved my. Where do I change my input device? I just clicked on the screen to focus it. I don't want to play with the computer with the keyboard. I don't.
Amateur.
It locks in your controller. Who the fuck programmed this game? The Scott? Oh no. Oh my fucking god, not again? That's insane. I pushed the hotkey to start recording with NVIDIA Broadcast, and that counted as me pushing a button on the keyboard. The Control and F12 keys, of course, which are used all the time in this game for the people who play it on keyboard, obviously. God damn it, I did it. Oh my fuck. I did it again. Why do you lock me into a fucking control device? You know what it's supposed to be, and I know what it's supposed to be. God. Fix your game, Dan. The indicator arrows for directional influence are green and white. Claren has a palette that turns her plasma sword green and white, with green and white hit sparks. This makes it almost impossible to see the arrows. Why green explosion unsafe? I thought green explosion good. This issue will only become worse over the years as thousands of skins and cosmetic effects are added to the game. Oh. My favorite bug is a minor one, but it's so funny I have to share it. There's no logic for handling mirror colors, so if your opponent chooses red Claren, then you can't choose red Claren either. Thus, if you queue for ranked and you're missing a color for your own character, then you know it's going to be a mirror match. Hypothetically, you could scroll through every character and every color to see if there's one you don't have, and identify your opponent's character even when you're supposed to be making a blind pick. I swear I'm missing a color. I thought I had a blue color for Claren. See, yeah, the blue. I couldn't select that. Oh, because he was selecting it. Okay. This is dumb. I've said some pretty mean things in this review, but I sincerely do have profound respect for Dan Fornace. He's been doing this for a long time, and he is overall a genuine guy who wants to do cool stuff. The Rivals 2 characters look great and feel fun, and that's not an easy thing to accomplish. Making games in a cursed genre like Smash Bros is an enormous workload, and you have to be kind of crazy in order to attempt it. Then you have to be even crazier to make a sequel in a new engine with a new art style. It's important for people to be willing to do this so the rest of us can have things to enjoy, but we should not accept mediocrity. Dan himself is aware of the difference between people's expectations and the reality of the game, as you can read in a year-end FAQ he published on Twitter in 2024. If you are at all interested in what is going on behind the scenes with Rivals 2, you should read this. Link in description. The topics I found most interesting were the networking and financial situations. Dan compares Rivals 2's server networking to the superhighway used by Riot Games for League of Legends to get people onto good servers, directly working with ISPs to make things smoother. Rivals 2 being a smaller game means they don't have the same resources, so people in similar geographical areas can have very different connections to the same server for reasons beyond the player's control. Yes, peer-to-peer networking would have avoided this. I don't know what they were smoking. Financially, things were really dire just before launch. Aether Studios' bank account literally hit $0 while they were waiting for the first check to come in from Steam. If the game had flopped, then it likely would have been the end of the company. And Rivals 2 is doing well by all their metrics, so it seems like they're stable for now. Seriously, I'm sympathetic, but I'm not going to pretend that it's my responsibility as a customer to support developers just because they're developers. You have to bring something good to the market if you want my money. So let it be known that what I have said in this video and what I will say next is said in good faith. Rivals 1 was basically an esports community uplift project which could only succeed because of the enormous amount of money, prestige, viewership, and new blood flooding into Smash in 2015 as a result of the Smash Brothers documentary. I know this because I was part of that wave of new blood and I saw it happen in real time. Obviously Dan had been working on Rivals 1 beforehand, but I truly don't think the game would have survived if it weren't for the Smash esports pipeline being as big and optimized as it was. It was a golden age for extracting teenagers' pocket money. You can see this reflected in Rivals 1's general development trends. Exclusive skins for tournaments, lots of balance patches to adjust minor mechanics for hardcore players, and single-player content somewhat taking a backseat. Even late in the game's lifespan, there were patches for very minor things like knockback angles and damage calculation functions. You know what Rivals 1's biggest selling point was and still is at the end? Letting people put their furry OCs into the workshop and have them beat up Mario pissing. In the midst of uncertainty about a new series with new mechanics and characters, it makes sense to follow the people who are willing to devote so much time and energy to this crazy thing you've made. Who knew where Rivals 1 would end up? But Rivals 1 was being shown around nearly a decade ago. In the time since it launched, we've gotten Smash Ultimate, Slap City, Rivals 1 Workshop Support, Nick All-Star Brawl, Multiversus, Nick All-Star Brawl 2, Multiversus again, Multiversus Dying, Project M coming back from the dead for free, Melee getting rollback for free, Melee's Acania build being updated to 1.0 with new stages, trophies, and characters, and community-driven projects that I don't even know about. Super Smash Flash is presumably still adding Gokus. Despite the way Smash players talk and act, there is a lot of choice if you want to play one of these games, and a lot of them, namely Slap City and Nick All-Star Brawl 2, succeed not just in the core gameplay. They pay respect to the source material and are complete products with lots of stuff to do. Rivals 2 is not merely competing with its past self, which is bad enough for a live service game, but with the collective improvements and buildup of a decade of platform fighters and Smash clones. Also the biggest Smash game ever, which people are still playing. What does Rivals 2 offer? There are lots of skins and microtransactions to buy. Movement is smooth, if you already know how to play it. Tutorials coming soon, maybe. Story mode was a major selling point, but that was pushed back. No official date as of this writing in July. Mods are not officially supported yet, although maybe that'll come later. I don't know, did I mention skins? Like I said earlier, I can't recommend Rivals 2. As much fun as the characters and core gameplay may give me, operative word may, everything outside of the 1v1 versus mode is appallingly shallow or broken or just missing. Rivals 2 is a game for the competitive community, not just foremost, but only. If you think the characters are appealing, or the setting has something cool in it, or you want to learn more about the lore, then Rivals 2 is not for you. Everything Rivals 2 does is meant to shove you into ranked matches and microtransactions, and they didn't consider it important to let you practice while you wait. If you have a lot of money and free time, and you don't respect yourself, then I suppose I might recommend Rivals 2. Or, you know, going outside. If you want to know what made so many people fall in love with Rivals of Aether, check out Rivals 1, especially the Rivals 1 workshop.
What? What? Oh no! Dies right after.
Thank you so much for watching. This video was a huge undertaking that I started on a whim, and look where that got me. I began back in February. That said, it's also the end of a high-effort creative project, which is something I haven't done in literally years. I hope that the reception to this video justifies the amount of time and energy I put into it. If you've watched this far, please like the video, please leave a comment, and please subscribe. Also, please share it with your friends and shill it in whatever group chats you're in. I don't make any kind of money on YouTube, so the positive feedback I get from my viewers is my only reward. And honestly, my viewers are the best. You're incredible. My plans for the future include smaller videos and returning to my one true love, Guilty Gear Xrd. I also want to cover more Street Fighter 6 because I've been playing that game a lot and really enjoying it. Stay tuned. Bright things up ahead.